Calling this meeting to order, Monday, September 23rd, 6 p.m. Crosby, would you do roll call, please?
Mike?
Here.
Jake?
Here.
Gail?
Here.
Dale?
Here.
Eric is excused. Vito?
Here.
Carolyn's running late. Craig?
Here.
Crosby here.
All right, this is an open meeting and it has been posted. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. We're going to move right on down to citizens' comments. Do we have any?
We do. Citizens' comments. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to make his or her comments. We will signal you when you are at the 2.5-minute mark to begin to wrap up your comments. We expect all speakers to honor the time limit, refrain from using inappropriate language, and be respectful in their comments. Citizens who do not meet these expectations may be prohibited from speaking at future board committee meetings. Speakers are to address the board, not the audience. The school board does not endorse any comments made by members of the community here tonight. We would like to remind our community members of the impact of their words on others and our children that are watching. We commit to listening to you in a respectful manner and ask that you do the same. We expect the audience will be respectful of the speakers and of the board and refrain from responding with verbal comments, cheering, applause, or behavior that will detract from the meeting. If proper decorum is not adhered to, the board president can suspend citizens' comments. Please note that no obstructions can be created between the board and the audience. Visual aids cannot be used, and the area behind the speaker will be cleared during public comment. Also, to respect your speakers and meeting participants, please silence your cell phones. Thank you. First up is Mr. Randy Middleton.
Come up and have a seat, and please speak into the mic.
As it shows, this is my first board meeting.
No problem. Welcome.
Good evening, and thank you guys for your service and doing what you do, because it's not easy. What brings me here today is I do before and after school care for my grandchildren. And I live in Chateau Lane in Big Bend. And for the past 3 years, the bus stop is Woodbury and Chateau. I mean, that's from the bus company, that's where they say it's at. For the past 3 years, the bus driver has saw that all the children getting on the bus are at my driveway and my neighbor's driveway, about 2 driveways down. I sent out an form, and the bus driver said we can't move the bus stop, we have to keep it there. So I called the school, called the bus company, submitted the e-form requesting a stop. Tom answered me last Friday saying they're not going to change it, and said I could come here and appeal his decision. And I am making that appeal that it's not an issue of the distance the children have to walk. There's 2 kindergartners that are walking, and the issue is there's no sidewalks. There's ditches on both sides of the road. When they stood in the end of my driveway, it was a lot safer for them to stand there. And we're not asking students to walk farther from the north side of Chateau. These are the only students that are getting on the bus at that bus stop. So I'm asking appeal to the decision that, like I said, for 3 years, Bob, the bus driver, just applied common sense and said, hey, everybody's getting on and off right here. He picked them up, dropped them off across the street. And we don't have young children crossing the street. We try to make it, the bus company does a fantastic job. They try to make it as safe as possible. But like I said, the winter months, there is no safe place for them to stand with the snow and on the side of the road. So I'm just asking for what I say, common sense, to allow the bus company to move the bus stop 2 driveways south. That's all I got.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
All right, we are going down to consent agenda, looking for the approval of the school board meeting minutes of August 26, 2024. Any questions or comments? Not hear any. That is approved by consent. Moving down to recognitions, employee of the month.
All right. Tonight it should say employees of the month because tonight it is my privilege to recognize 2 amazing people who have contributed to the health and wellness of all of our employees. So I'm going to ask Becky Halverson and Don Hook to come on up to the podium here. They love that the spotlight is on them, by the way. So Becky and Don have operated the employee clinic since it opened in August of 2023. And since then, they have cared for countless patients with the utmost compassion, thoroughness, patience, and integrity. Both Becky and Don are approachable and friendly, and their genuine nature puts the minds of their patients at ease. When someone needs immediate care, Becky and Don will do what they can to squeeze in a last-minute appointment. Last year, when we administered a survey to all of our employees who receive our health benefits, the number one part of our plan that received the most positive feedback was our employee clinic. A recent testimonial really sums up what they do. I'm going to read it. This past week, my son made his grand entrance into 7th grade. He had an accidental break. He toppled over and met the concrete, and the concrete won. He ended up with a concussion and was in need of stitches. I was teaching at the time, and when my phone began blowing up, I knew that there was an issue. Upon picking him up, the kind ladies in the health room referred me to the Mukwonago Area School District Health Clinic. Becky and Don were able to see him immediately. They were unbelievable with him. Please understand, he is 12. He was hurt. He was repeating himself, impatient, slurring, and just generally not his normal self. They were wonderful with him. Becky began talking with him about fantasy football, which seemed to calm him. Then she was able to give him the stitches he needed. I had zero clue that the health clinic was able to do stitches. I was truly impressed. After she fixed him up, she went through the concussion protocols with him to determine that he did in fact have a mild concussion. After about 30 to 45 minutes, we went on our way after scheduling a follow-up appointment for the very next day. Upon our return home, he began vomiting, so I called the clinic for advice. Becky was quick to give her medical advice and even quicker to calm my concerns. I was even more impressed when she called me back later that evening, after 8:00 p.m., just to check up on him. I have to say, when we were first told that the MASD was moving towards the on-site clinic model, I was skeptical. I have been there a few times, and every single time I have walked away thinking, wow, we are so blessed to have this. This year, due to the high demand of clinic use, we have expanded our staffing and our hours. Prioritizing employee health correlates to a more productive, positive workforce. Healthy employees also equate to higher attendance rate, and we know that this positively impacts our student achievement and the operation of our schools. Becky and Don help MASD to have a healthy workforce, and we are so grateful for their service. On behalf of the Mukwonago Area School District, it is my pleasure to announce Becky Halverson and Don Hook as our September Employees of the Month. You are welcome to say a few words if you'd like.
Just thank you. Thanks for taking a chance on us and bringing
Speak in a microphone, please.
thanks for taking a chance on us and bringing us along to the Mukwonago School District Clinic. I think the two of us have really enjoyed seeing it grow from when we were at Parkview and saw 2 patients a day to now we're crazy busy and can barely keep up, but it's all good. Thanks so much.
Congratulations. Okay, moving on to policy.
All right. A couple of you gave me a hard time over a batch of 16 policies. These are coming forward tonight for a first look and a first reading. There is no urgent timeline on passing or approving these policies. So here to answer any questions you might have on them tonight. And then move forward if we have to agendize them for our board meeting next week, or if we have to hold on some of them into October, we can do that as well.
Dr. Cook, the attendance, number 5,200, something about the state law?
Yep.
Can
hold
you
on.
give me a 30-second?
Yeah, so on attendance, with the state law, what our policy needs to recognize in the state law is just that parents have, using reasonable judgment, they can excuse their child for inclement weather. And then we needed to add to our policy that we can excuse a student for sounding taps at a ceremony, so we can excuse a child for that as well, as an excused absence.
That's the law.
That's in the law.
Right?
Big fan of taps myself.
It makes me
That's a
cry.
law.
Right on.
It is important to note that, we do have, I mean, on this, kind of in the meat and bones of this, there is a law. It's in the state constitution that kids need to be in school, or that we have to provide an education ages 6 to 20. There's a compulsory attendance law that talks about kids needing to be in school from the age of 6 up until their 18th birthday. And there's a lot then that we have to do after that as far as notifying parents what can be excused, what can't be excused, the number of days that can be excused without a medical note, so on and so forth. And Christine and her teams do a great job of monitoring that. We want to work with families from an attendance standpoint, but we also have an obligation to make sure kids are in school.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You gonna go through all these, or if we have questions,
Yep.
just ask
So,
away? Okay.
Well, I
Absolutely.
was
So,
hoping that the ones we have questions on, you could talk about.
yep, I can kind of do high level, whichever the board prefers. If we look at curriculum development, the state statute did change, and it added Hmong Americans that we must provide an education on.
I have a question about that,
Yep.
actually. So with its Q in the policy here,
Yep.
are we required to put those specific ethnic groups in here? Wouldn't it be more efficient to just end the sentence with American society? Because then we're not constantly revising it depending on which groups are we required to teach about these groups? Is that why they're in there?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so, all right. Never mind then.
I have a question about G,
Gee.
under board directs curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
What policy number?
We're on the
2210.
2210
Thank you.
curriculum development. Then it says the board directs at the curriculum of the district, and I'm going down to G. Says utilizes a variety of learning resources to accomplish the educational goals. Now, it's just because it's not in writing, so does that mean they can bring in any resources they want, or does that have to be approved, and where does it get approved?
Yeah, so the board approves the curriculum, and then the board approves the purchase of the instructional materials. And, we'll be getting more into that this year, but Stephanie had taken us through a number of resource adoptions over the years. That's then where the board approves. There's also like supplemental materials that can be brought into the class if they enhance the materials. But all of the materials have to be aligned to what the board approved curriculum is.
Okay, thank you. I have another question about O. At least once in grades 5 through 8 and at least once in grades 9 through 12 include instruction on the Holocaust and other genocides effective with the 22-23 school year. Do you know what other genocides they teach about?
I don't off the top of my head. We'd have to do some research on
Okay.
that.
All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. I'm just taking a note down. All right, then policy 5430, class rank. That's been updated to address Act 95, which addresses the top 5% and 10% of the graduating class. So there was recent legislation that came out that said that the school district needs to identify the top 5% of the class and the top 10% for direct admissions into the UW system. And we have to have that on the transcript by the junior year, correct? Graduation requirements is the next policy up. It has to be updated to address the statutory change of a half credit of personal financial literacy. And then 1/2 credit of CTE or fine arts. And then a student must also complete share a capstone project that outlines college and career readiness at a high school graduate in accordance with board requirements. The other part that we added to this was the GED option 2, the GEDO program that we've been running for a number of years. Christine, do you know how long? 5 years now? 3 years? Okay, 3 years with that, and that's a alternate pathway for a student to earn a diploma.
I have a question on the capstone project.
Yep.
Is that going to align with the students' intentions for after school? Meaning it's not going to be something that's just way out of their scope, that they're not going to be interested in, they're not going to want to complete it if they're not college bound?
Yeah, it's a project of the student selection,
Okay.
and it's presented to staff of the student selection.
Okay.
Policy 5505. This addresses academic honesty, and it really is the addition of the use of artificial intelligence, natural language processing tools for schoolwork. So we had a number of conversations internally about how we're going to go about incorporating AI. ChatGPT was one of the tools that was discussed. This is some recommended language from Neola as to how to go about addressing AI in schools. Suspension and expulsion. Under suspension, the additional language is students identified with a disability may be suspended in accordance with Administrative Guideline 5605, disciplining students with disabilities. The reason why that is in there is if a child is a child with a disability, there are certain steps that we might need to take as a school district. That might include doing a functional behavior analysis, coming up with a behavior intervention plan. That might require us to sit down and meet and review an IEP. There are certain steps we need to take if a child also approaches 10 days of suspension. A student with a disability, there's a number of steps, including a manifestation determination that we would have to schedule and conduct to determine if the behavior is a manifestation of the disability. So that's all outlined in that AG 5605.
I have a question. A parent recently brought to my attention about a student that would, I guess, have a temper tantrum, flip over a desk, throw a chair, and the question from the parent was, why does the whole class have to lose class time and leave while the kid is having a meltdown? They worry about the safety of their kid and losing class time.
Yeah, so definitely can hear that concern as both an educator and a parent myself. It's easier and it's safer, more importantly safer, to move a group of students who are regulated and not in the dysregulated state. If you're working with a student who's dysregulated and you have to put hands on, we do have the ability to do that to maintain safety. Christine and her team provide nonviolent crisis intervention training, both the verbal de-escalation and then also if you have to go hands-on. But if you can safely remove the class from the situation, that is more ideal. Get them to a classroom where they can resume learning, and then we can deal with the student. It is a big deal if we have to put hands on a kid who is dysregulated. And then there are a number of steps that we need to take as a school district to really identify what the behavior is, why were we seeing that behavior. In many instances, it involves that IEP meeting that we talked about. So if we can safely remove the kids from the environment, it's a better option for us than having to put hands on a student.
And at what point would you consider removing that child from the classroom?
Permanently or making a temporary change?
Either or.
Yeah, so permanently, that would be an IEP team decision if the child was a child with a disability or if the child was in evaluation. We would defer to the IEP team to talk about the environment. We'd also look at the supports that were put in place for that student. Do we have aid coverage? Does the aid provide support? Is the student being challenged or not challenged enough academically? Are there certain sensory things in the environment that set the student off? Those are all the things that we need to take a look at. We would look for temporary removal. That would be the ideal. Do we need to get the situation kind of under control and learn more about the student? But if the environment in and of itself was just not the appropriate environment, what Christine and one of her team members would hold the IEP meeting with the family, and they'd talk about, is this a general ed environment? Is this a special ed environment? And then what do we need to do to support that student?
Thank you.
You're welcome. The next one, just use of district credit cards. There's a statement in there, the credit card may never be used to purchase alcohol or personal items or services, nor is the personal gain of credit card rewards, such as bonus points, frequent flyer miles, or any other affinity programs reward permitted under these circumstances. So I just want to clarify that can't use the district card to get hotel points for personal trips. The assistive technology and services policy. Assistive technology, again, is something that's discussed under the IEP, and there's a statement to the such in this policy now. Student mental health services. We want to be able to address an agreement that would allow the student the free and appropriate public education for students with disabilities. So if we're saying we're going to excuse you for part of the day, we want to ensure we have an agreement with the family that the parent understands that they might miss some special education services and that we wouldn't ideally schedule those services when the child was receiving their special education. The next policies are food service policies. I might have to ask Tom to jump in on some of these. I got it. All right, I got it.
Ranch.
Yes, ranch dressing. So just for perspective for the board, anything that deals with food in schools is generally governed by the USDA. So there's some things that come into us and that we get required to put into policies by the USDA. And the check on that is when we have the food service audits. And they will come in, and one of the things that they'll look at is our policies and make sure we dot our I's and cross our T's in our policies. We do have, under dietary modifications, I think that that's one of the more substantial adds to this policy, just making sure that we have a medical note that says that the student needs the accommodated food plan while in school. We do have Christina Oswald listed, our food service director. And then we do provide the information for families in this policy should they need a accommodated food plan for a food allergy or something of that nature. We also list the grievance procedures for disability accommodation. And that is in green on the 3rd page of the policy. And then the link to the USDA files to address the civil rights complaint should we not comply. The next policy, free and reduced price meals. Again, it outlines what we would do under free and reduced price meals. It does include students who are homeless or in foster care or runaway. Students receiving free or reduced price milk will not be subjected to any of the following actions related to the receipt of the meal. That we will regularly evaluate the plan. We do add a non-discrimination statement in there, and again, this is coming from the USDA. No action is being taken tonight, but we want an opportunity for you guys to take a look at that.
Christine, how's our Angel Fund doing this year? If you know offhand, if you don't, no big deal.
I don't know the current amount right now, but I
Okay.
know that any family who has needed to utilize it has been able to. So it's not depleted. I imagine
Okay,
there's still
good.
funding in there.
Thanks.
If you look at the next policy, 8540 on vending machines, you'll note the addition of the non-discrimination statement. The USDA does have its own non-discrimination statement that it asks school districts to put into policy. This is a different non-discrimination statement than you might see in other policies. So again, this is the wording that the USDA has provided us. Again, not up for vote tonight, just up for, please ask questions if you have them. Competitive food sales, similarly, the non-discrimination statement is added. The next policy, 8600, under transportation. District-owned vehicles used for transporting students. Talks about all drivers of motor vehicles shall be under written contract with the board. So we don't have volunteers driving students. We would have somebody who's contracted with the district. And then all operators of motor vehicles shall be subject to the provisions of the statute and may be subject to the district's employee drug testing policy in accordance with 8601 controlled substances and alcohol policy for employees that transport students. So if we are going to transport students using vehicles, we want to make sure that those students are protected as much as possible. We do have a policy, transportation by private vehicle for district-sponsored activities or trips. And we talk about the steps that if we had, for instance, a small team of golfers, for instance, going to the golf course, the golf coach could drive them in their vehicle. And it talks about the steps that we would take in order for that person to be able to drive students. And then transportation service contracts. Policy 8680. And you can see that this eliminates the district-owned vehicles used for transporting students. And that puts that into one of the prior policies, transportation by private vehicle.
I know there isn't a rush, but are you guys okay putting us on for our next meeting?
As always, if you guys have questions on any of these as you read through them, don't hesitate to give me a call. We can certainly have answers to questions at the board meeting on Monday night.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Moving on to personnel topics.
Oh, I know. All right, Tom's going to pull up the presentation for me. All right, so this is like 1,000 ways to look at teacher retention. I should have titled this presentation. We're going to look at this data lots of different ways because retention is important to us. So starting with just the overall numbers, so in 23-24, we had 361 total certified staff, and we had 43 certified staff resignations. So what that equated to in a couple of different ways, so we ended then going into this year with an 88% overall retention rate. If we take out of that our administrators, who we don't consider teaching staff, and then some of our others, we dropped that to, we went up to an 89% retention rate. Our objective is to be at a 95% retention rate for the 25-26 school year. That was our objective for this past year as well. Obviously, we fell a little short. So looking at this in terms of a district comparison, all districts across the state collect retention data. And so when I put together this presentation, this was the best data I could get. So as you can see, the voluntary resignation percentage, this is just looking at teachers. So this is, again, taking out the others, administrators, instructional coaches, interventionists. This is just looking at teachers. This past year, we had 6% of our teachers voluntarily resign. And if you look at some of those other districts, you see that there's fluctuations from the blue, which is this past year's data, and then the black, which is the year prior. And so again, 6%, not necessarily where we want to be, but also, you know, if you look at Waukesha, Oconomowoc, Elmbrook, there are districts that are right within that same norm. Special education teachers, that's another area that a lot of districts have started to track because it is such a hard to fill position. Statewide, we're seeing fewer and fewer teachers go into special education programming, which is of real concern because it's at the same time that we're seeing students qualify for special education at, you know, exponential rates. And so this is also an area that we're tracking. This year we had, out of our resignations, 2.2% of them were special education teachers. And so this is also an area that we're really looking at. Looking at years of service, so who's resigning and How many years of service have they given to our district? As you can see, right around 70% of our resignations are coming from teachers who have been with us between 0 to 10 years. That's a group of teachers that for other districts when they leave, right, other districts can afford to pay them. And so it's a very marketable group of teachers. 13% left us who had 11 to 15 years, and then 10% in the 16 to 20, and we had one teacher leave us who had over 20 years experience. If we look at just our overall distribution of, I included retirements in this as well, resignations and retirements. You can see that majority of them came from the high school. That, again, is not surprising. That is where we have our largest number of staff. And then it was a pretty, I would say not equal, but equal distribution amongst our elementaries. And then again, Parkview having our second highest, which again is not surprising, knowing that they have the second highest staff. So resignations and time of year. So ideally, the sooner that we get a resignation, the better. The sooner we can fill it, the sooner we can plan for it. This is especially important for us at the secondary level where things like licensure and content that they teach is really important. Elementary certifications, most of them are certified to teach grades K through 6, where again, at the secondary level, if we lose a physics teacher, we have to hire someone who has a physics license. And so it's just a little bit, again, different. So you can see that most of our resignations came between that April through June. We did have an influx. We had 3 science teachers who resigned in August. That was quite unusual, but again, most of our resignations came in time for us to fill them with adequate time before the school year. So again, time to plan, time to fill those positions. So who was it that resigned? We had in total 5 elementary positions, 5 middle school positions, 9 high school positions, and I just illustrate like what those were. So we lost 1 in business, 5 in science, 1 in math, 1 in family and consumer science, and then 1 work seminar. And I highlighted the blue in science, and then we lost 8 special education teachers because those are hard to fill positions, again, across the state, and they have incredibly small candidate pools. And so what has happened with both of those positions is that you are seeing districts literally cold calling. They have a license. This is what we can offer you. Will you come over? And so it is not like that is the recruitment strategy. And so for some of these positions, and we were guilty of it ourselves in some cases, like, hey, you teach this. I heard your name. Are you interested and what do you need to come over? So for some of these really hard to fill positions where, again, the candidate pool is really shallow, that's the recruitment strategy that's being utilized. We lost 6 administrators. That includes 1 dean of students who is technically not an administrative position, but I'm lumping her in. 3.5 student services, so 2 counselors, 1 social worker, and then a half-time speech and language pathologist, and then 6 kind of others. So again, intervention and advanced learning placement coach, 2 library media specialists, and then 1 instructional coach. So why did they resign? So my favorite is the one that came back to us. So let's focus on that person. So one person resigned, but then actually came back and reapplied, and we hired her. So if you look at that, all of the colors other than the orange, I kind of categorize them as we're not getting those people back no matter what. So medical reasons. They moved out of a 60-mile radius. So these are people who I moved out of state. I think many of you know of the principal who moved to be closer to her family, right? Like, I'm not keeping her no matter what retention strategy I use. The non-renewed are people who were either given an option to resign from our district or we were going to move to non-renewal. And so thankfully we didn't have to non-renew anybody. But again, these are people that we had concerns about, and so we wanted to make sure that they were given the option. Left education, again, these are people who decided education isn't for me. And so there's nothing I'm gonna do to convince them to stay otherwise. And so that left 74% of our resignations that left for other opportunities. So what we do with all of our resignations, whether it's a support staff or a certified staff, is we offer them an exit interview. And employees can choose to meet face-to-face with me, or they can provide feedback virtually via a Google form. Exit interviews are not anonymous. So if they choose to fill out that online Google form, they still have to identify who they are. And we're really clear that the reason it's not anonymous is because the anonymity doesn't give us actionable feedback. If I don't know if you're a high school teacher, a middle school teacher, going on a rant fest about why you're leaving doesn't always tell me where the problem might exist. And so I'm very clear with people when I sit down with them for the exit interviews that I'm not running back and saying, Christine, this person said this one thing about you. It's a combination, it's a compilation of themes, because we typically don't act on one person's feedback. We act on what's a general theme or consensus that we can reach, and then how do we act on that. So these are the overall questions that I asked during an exit interview. They're the same questions that are asked on the Google survey. And I'll just give you a minute to read through those. The last question I think is probably the most important, and that's, is there anything else that you want me to know? And I leave that question very open-ended because some people walk in with, I really want to make sure Rachel hears this. And if some of my questions don't lend themselves to whatever this is the question that opens it up for them to tell me whatever it is that they might be thinking. So based off of this year's exit interviews, there were two themes that really emerged. One was better communication. So the word communication, I literally started to count it because it showed up so many times. And what emerged was really staff wanting to see an increase in communication from both the building level and the district level around initiatives, goals, celebrations. And so really that theme of transparency, being clear about what we are doing, having an understanding of the why, that all goes into that communication. And then the other piece that came from that is staff desiring more feedback from their supervisors regarding their roles and their performance. And the feedback needs to be meaningful and relevant. And so something that we did this summer with all of our administrators was we started a professional learning series, I guess I'm gonna call it, around how do we provide relevant and meaningful feedback to teachers so that when you are in their classrooms, when you are meeting with them, you're not giving them generic praise, generic questions, right? I wonder, that really don't push them to be better educators. Most really quality professionals want to hear authentic feedback about how they're doing. And the feedback that teachers are telling us is that they don't feel like that's always happening. The second theme that emerged was around compensation and benefits. So specifically, we had a lot of feedback around just overall compensation, specifically from that teacher group. So I can get a better offer here. I can get more money if I go here. And I would always say, there's some districts where I can't beat that price. And there are other places where we would obviously try and get a match. Sick leave versus paid time off. So we heard some feedback around, is there a way that we can explore just a different model? There are some districts that are doing that. And then the carryover of a personal day. So staff that, for example, my child's getting married next year. I don't need my personal day this year. Could I carry it over and have 2 to use for the rehearsal dinner and then the wedding? Right? So those extenuating circumstances that sometimes happen, that they get the memo from me that says you have to take a day unpaid because that's our current handbook. Can we look at being just a little bit more flexible with that? So just overall compensation and benefits. So what are we doing with all of this data? What are we doing to continue to support teacher retention? So a couple things. One is I'm visiting all of our new teachers in September and giving them a personalized thank you note with a little small gift. just to do a touch base, right? Like I saw you all when I hired you, and we sat down and you said you were really eager and you want to be in Mukwonago, and now the kids are here and life is kind of crazy. Are you still doing okay? Do you need anything? And just asking that question sometimes has unleashed, I just met with a teacher this past last week, and I said, do you need anything? And she said, I still don't know how to put in an absence, and I have a doctor appointment for my child, and I don't know how to do that. And so I sat down, we logged on to Frontline, and we entered it together. And that, right, just eased stress by, right, 10% for her. So I think it's sometimes just asking the what do you need and not waiting until I see them for a new teacher meeting where they're in front of 20 other people and they don't want to ask the question. I'm going to conduct stay interviews again. We did those last year in the spring. We're going to conduct them again this year in the fall and the spring with the goal of, again, hitting 25% of our teaching staff to, again, just get a better understanding of what's going well, what's getting in the way, and how can we continue to improve. Our administrators will be sending out a school perception survey in the fall. So by late October, they'll send that out. That is the survey that asks questions like, would you recommend that somebody from Mukwonago, or would you recommend a friend to work here? Is your principal approachable? Things like that. And we ask then the principals to create an action plan based on that data. Because again, it's very much a culture climate survey. Our staff feeling like this is a positive environment to work. I will be spearheading a wellness committee. We have not formed it. We've gotten as far as I'm spearheading a wellness committee. We have a policy around wellness in place, and we are just going to enhance what that looks like a little bit. So a wellness committee that can help us to focus on, again, just how we can continue to enhance people's wellness. Again, that's as far as we've gotten so far. Stay tuned for updates. And then just again, in response to the communication theme, every few weeks, Ben Casau spearheads a key news for staff, so updates that go out to all staff. We're going to include in that 2 standing items. One is just district-wide celebrations, and then 2 is, again, just something around wellness, so employees just being able to take care of themselves. So those are our action steps so far, and we might come up with others as we continue to go through the year and hear feedback from our staff, especially after those stay interviews. Questions? Yeah.
Gooch?
Hi, slide 8, other opportunities. Does that mean other teaching opportunities, or, okay, it doesn't include people who left for a totally different career?
No, that was the left education bucket.
All right, and then you mentioned that you added in retirements on the slide 5.
Yep.
So was retirements also part of the first, or the
No.
89%? So,
Nope, this was just, that was the only slide that I included retirement.
all right, and forgive my ignorance.
No, that's okay.
At 20 years, a teacher can retire?
They have to put it, well,
I asked.
they can retire really when they choose to
Well,
retire.
I'll revise how I say this, because it had teachers from 15 to 20 or 16 to 20 years that left, and then the 20 to 30. In the 20 to 30 was one teacher that retired.
Nope, this is just resignations.
Okay, that is not any. There's no retirements there.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say majority, and Tom could probably speak better to this, majority of teachers are retiring after they put in at least 30 years of service or have hit the age of 55, sometimes 57.
57, 59.
Yeah.
Is there like an average? How many teachers do retirement, like each year or every whatever?
So
A couple or?
So the reason that you see the blanks for like our years past is this was the first year we started really collecting this data and like synthesizing it this way. I'm sure we could get some of that historical data pulled for you, but I don't have that at this point in time.
It's not like pressing. I was just trying to
Yeah.
compare like where we're at now as opposed to maybe 5 years ago.
Sure. Yeah. I
Like,
can definitely
in
look
certain
into that.
industries, I mean, we always had right about 10% retire, you know.
Yep.
And
Yep.
we wanted to know if that was changing because people were retiring earlier because
Yep.
they're just frustrated or not.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
I have a question.
Jake?
The years of service in slide 4, is that in our district or?
It's
in their career.
nope, it's years of service in their career. So when we hire them, we factor in their years of service, and so it could be in our district, it could be their total years of service.
Crosby?
For the sick leave and paid time off.
Crosby, talk to the microphone, please.
It's right in front of my face.
Then speak louder, please.
For the sick leave and the paid time off, what do we currently offer for those?
So paid time off is not something that's afforded to teachers as a benefit. So administrators have vacation time and then have a sick leave bank. Teachers every year accumulate 9 sick days and then accumulate or are given 1 personal day, and that personal day is not something that carries over. So they have to use it or they lose it.
Is that industry standard? Is that pretty common?
Yes, there's very, very small select few districts that have moved to a PTO option where it's not sick leave, it's just everything is paid time off, but that is a very small number.
Okay. And no one's looking to make a shift, really? That's just not common in this world?
Joe, why don't you take that?
So I did ask Rachel to talk to the HR directors in the area about it, and the school districts that went to the PTO model saw a substantial increase in the amount of staff absences. And not that we would want to prohibit people, because I think one of the things that we're trying to do is exactly that comment that Rachel made, like, if your child's getting married, how do we not penalize you for your child getting married if you need a couple days off? But we have the obligation to have our teachers in front of our kids, you know, and the school year is such, it's a unique thing, it's a unique profession in that way, where the summer months, the winter break, the spring break, so on and so forth. If you offer the PTO and you can't find subs, then what happens is teachers fill, and then we hear from our staff when we meet with them that we're getting asked to sub all the time, you know, that this is increasing, you know, the pressure of the job. I don't have enough time to plan, and then job satisfaction goes down. So we're trying to find a way to strike a balance to help that employee out who has that, you know, legitimate life opportunity there, seeing their child get married and a little bit of time with them, while also not handicapping the entire employee group with additional absences. I mean, one school district indicated that they had 800 more teacher absences when they went to a PTO model. That's a huge number to try to work around.
Okay.
Any other questions? Virgie? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I think this is really good information for our district. It's vital, actually, especially in today's job market,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
also letting our employees know how much we do care and want them here.
Yeah.
So
We
thank
want
you
it.
for heading that up.
Yep, thank you.
Student learning topics, summer updates.
So we have the full team here presenting tonight as they get situated.
Numbers must be coming. Ben's here.
Got the data.
All right. So Student Learning and Student Services Department has a presentation for you tonight on all of the activities and work that occurred over the summer. So as Joe said, we have Ben and Michelle with Christine and I tonight. And we just want to highlight the great things that happen in our district over the summer. Even though the schools officially let out for summer, the work doesn't end and the activities don't end. So we have a ton of offerings of activities for our students, and our staff is engaged in multiple things. Some of them are providing those student opportunities. They're engaging in professional learning. They're engaging in curriculum work and planning for the school year and beyond. So we are going to highlight those things tonight. We're very lucky to have such a dedicated staff. They are amazing. They provide such wonderful things for our students, and they're really eager to engage in that work to ensure that we're providing the best opportunities for our kids. So we're going to start with highlights on summer school.
Can you advance that slide, please? So yeah, you knew if I was here, it was either summer school or data, and I'm going to actually give you data about summer school tonight, so it's both. And as Angela talked about, we have lots of points of pride in our summer work, and Not very many brighter than our summer school program. You know that we have built this program up over the last several years into something that I think we really, really can be genuinely proud of in this community. Again, this year we offered a wide variety of different programs, ranging from our Eagleville program, where they're getting into Jericho Creek and doing some things around their environment, to our very large Summer Adventures program. That's the program that if you're around the high school in those 4 weeks, you will notice lots and lots of not right-sized kids for the high school, and it's just a great, awesome, opportunity for our kids to be involved in a lot of different opportunities there. We have the second year of our summer musical program. That program has grown. It culminated this year with the kids that were performing there, serving as the opening act for kids from Wisconsin in our PAC. So great opportunity for them. They also did a separate performance on an adjacent evening. Of course, we have Indian Athletic Performance. Can't forget that. A great program that Mike Kanawak helps run, and with many, many staff members supporting that. Marching Band Camp, with Emma leading that. All Sports Academy, which is sort of Indian Athletic Performance for littles. 5K through grade 3. It's a 4-day, 2-hour per day camp that we've run for a couple of years now. They focus more on actual sports, not like fitness training per se, but it's a neat activity that we've seen some numbers grow over the last couple of years. And of course, a variety of band and orchestra camps that we have kind of leading into the end of the summer and looking ahead into the school year. I also can't forget on that list our credit programs at the high school too, our online programs like online health, online PE, online personal finance. I mentioned that in the graduation requirements. We give kids the opportunity to get some of those requirements knocked out during the summer, and then our credit recovery programs as well. So all in all, lots going on. We had nearly 2,300 unique students who participated in at least one of our summer programs. So what does that mean? 2,300 different kids, and there were a lot more if you factor in duplicates, but 2,300 unique individuals that did something with us during the summer. That is an incredible rate. That is up almost 200 unique kids from last year. If you factor that as a percentage of our total enrollment, you're looking at somewhere around 45, 46% of our enrolled kids were participating in something this summer. That is a high number, and for a district our size, I don't think there are too many that are in that ballpark. There are a few around, but definitely a very, very high percentage. I mentioned our Big Summer Adventures program. We had about 1,360 kids there. That's up just a little bit. I keep coming back to you year after year saying we will hit a ceiling at some point. At some point, we'll run out of kids and programs to offer. We haven't hit it quite yet, but that day is coming. And then Angela talked about our staff. I know Rachel mentioned it in staff retention as well. I think none of this is possible without our district teachers. We had nearly 100 of our own teachers that supported at least one of the programs. Some did multiple programs for us as well. One of the programs on their choir camp I didn't mention, but like PG Uhazi, for example, taught for us for Summer Adventures. He helped spearhead the summer musical. He also taught choir camp. He was a busy guy, and he's not alone. We had a number of different staff, and I know some are watching this or will watch recording. Thank you to all of them. I will also tell you, you'll be hearing from me for 2025 really soon, because we need a host of people, but it's really an incredible thing to see so many district staff support our summer school program and the kids that we have involved. All right, on to staff involvement.
All right, so I think one of my absolute favorite things about our district is the fact that we provide so many opportunities for professional development for our staff. Over the summer, the very first week that we had off in June, we had over 50 teachers who volunteered to take AVMR training. So AVMR stands for Advantage Math Recovery, and it's basically for teachers to learn best practice strategies to support our students who struggle with math. It is 4 days of pretty intense training that culminates with them actually working with students. And so we did partner with one of the Kids Connections and had the teachers actually working with students where they were able to actually try the things that they were learning in that AVMR course. And so just a huge kudos to the 50 teachers who decided to give up their very first week of summer vacation to do that training. For Bridges, as you know, we adopted Bridges Math in our kindergarten through 5th grade classrooms in 5 of our elementary schools. And so as part of the adoption, we were given a 6-hour training by the actual Bridges trainers. And so every K through 5 elementary teacher, special education teacher, instructional coach, ALP teacher, and principal came in this summer and was trained in Bridges for that 6 hours. And so we had to offer about 4 different sessions of that, and so district office was very busy those days. And then finally, Eagleville, which is doing iReady kindergarten through 6th grade, they also had a summer training, and so those teachers came in and received training in that, and they will also have additional professional development throughout the course of this school year to help them as they're implementing iReady. We had a PLC conference in Madison. So PLC is our professional learning community. We had 45 teachers, principals, and instructional coaches from secondary and elementary attend the conference in Madison. Principals were asked to choose members of their guiding coalitions, which are basically their teacher leadership teams that are promoting those PLCs in their buildings. And so that conference is amazing. It's run by the professional leaders of PLCs, many of whom have authored books, who are professional speakers who go around to various districts, and many of them also are district leaders, such as superintendents and things in their own communities. And so they really do educate us on the things that they're seeing and doing well, and are sharing success stories. And so it was just a really great opportunity for the building principals to work with their teachers and coaches so that when we came back in August to do building goal work, they had all of that same shared learning together. As you know, we've been doing letters training, which is our early reading foundational skills training that our teachers have been doing for the last several years. We offered one last round as our ESSER funds were running out. And so the teachers who finished that last cohort were given through August to finish up that last bit of training. Then as far as elementary scheduling, we hired a scheduling guru named Michael Reddig to come in and work with our building principals with the goal of just really trying to make our elementary schedules more cohesive. So we had conversations around having equal amounts of minutes in each of our instructional areas, making sure that we're optimizing the amount of time that we're in front of students, and basically, again, having cohesion amongst the elementary schools. And then I'm going to pass the torch on to Angela.
Yep. And then we had some training in science and ELA, mostly at our secondary level. We have pilots occurring. We're piloting new resources for ELA in grades 6 through 11. And then for science, we are piloting new materials in grades 7 and 8. And then in our biology and chemistry classes at the high school. So we had the representatives and specialists from those companies of those resources come in. All of the teachers that are involved in the pilots had a half day of training, learning the ins and outs of the resources, learning all the components that go along with the resources, learning the digital platforms, and then spending some time digging into the resource and creating units and aligning it to the standards.
We had some additional professional development opportunities for our paraprofessionals that work in our district. We spent some time learning about how to manage student behavior. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that our paraprofessionals in our district are amazing men and women who show up to work with some of our most unique children sometimes, and I am always grateful. It's a good opportunity to tell you how grateful I am for their service every day. So we always have a good time in summer getting to know each other better across buildings, but also just engaging in some professional learning. We also have our student services kickoff over the summertime, so we get to spend a lot of time kind of getting unfortunately also getting rewired and ready to start talking about compliance with 504s and IEPs. But again, it's always a great time to see each other. And even between those two, we have roughly about 150 people that come in during those two times. So just another commitment that you'll see across our system. We also spend some time talking about attendance updates. We had some alignment and cleanup to do after COVID, just some leftover things that we wanted to reorganize and put forward for this year. And then we do vector, like the Safe Schools training, but there's also additional topics that need to be covered when school starts again. So our student services staff got together and worked on a presentation regarding those issues underneath, just homelessness and risk assessments, threat assessments, and then child abuse and neglect, just some topics that are not only required to hit, but also an opportunity for teachers to ask some questions when they're not just sitting in front of a computer. And then we spent a lot of time this summer planning for SOAR. So it was great to see that team in here on a regular basis getting ready for the start of the school year.
I have a question for Christine.
Sure.
Christine,
Yes.
talking about
Right.
threat assessments, why all of a sudden do you see it across the whole country exploding? Is it a copycat thing?
I don't have a great answer for that. I know it was just recently in the paper again today, but I do think there's something to be said about some of the challenges that are out there on social media, unfortunately, that kids tend to take to I don't think they often understand the big impact that making a threat on social media or a comment to a friend or a picture or a Snapchat can have. And unfortunately, it has some pretty significant consequences. And I think Joe's gearing up to talk into his microphone because he does like to talk about school safety too.
I think the only thing I'd add to that is, if we can catch these things at the low level and we can determine that it's low level, then, we can chart a course forward. If we investigate it with law enforcement, with the teams that Christine leads, and we find that it is a moderate to high level, we can also address that accordingly. And so the sooner we can intervene when we start to see that threatening behavior, the better we will be at preventing any major issue from happening in our school environment. And it kind of goes both ways. I mean, the kids are doing things like Christine was talking about. They don't know what the consequences are. A lot of it involves social media and such. But what we see in the school when we conduct those threat assessments, what seems like something that's very innocuous can turn into something that's big. What something on the surface seems like it was very big, you find out that it was just words and there was nothing behind it. And so that process that Christine trains staff on is very important in that regard.
All right, so in addition to doing professional development, we also had a lot of curriculum work that was done at the elementary level. We had over 135 of our elementary teachers engage in some kind of summer curriculum or professional development work this summer. For Bridges, our instructional coaches each took a couple grade levels, met with those grade levels, and they went through the very first unit in Bridges to do intentional planning so that all of the teachers in first grade could come together and really dig into those units with one of the instructional coaches there to support. I also worked with our CAT chairs and some grade level teams to make sure that there was alignment between our report card and our new math resource and made sure that all of the standards alignment pieces were there. And then classroom teachers came in over the summer to rearrange their rooms because one of the big components of Bridges is Number Corner, and that takes up a good chunk of space in their classrooms. So they needed to come in and set those things up and make sure their rooms were rearranged so that kids could manipulate that area. We also did some assessment work in grades 3, 4, and 5. In literacy, we took the forward practice exam questions and we tried to balance our assessments while aligning them to the standards so that we weren't always asking just constructed response questions. We wanted to give our students the opportunity to engage with multiple choice types of questions, and so we did that work. Last year was our social studies implementation year, and part of that implementation year is gathering feedback, and so our CAT chairs and our teams did a great job all year long of documenting their feedback so that in the summer when we come together, we could use those pieces of feedback to make some changes to the social studies lessons. And one of the big pieces was to increase engagement because it's a lot of reading in social studies, and so trying to find ways to keep kids engaged. The instructional coaches have done a great job of bringing vocabulary practices into those social studies units as well. And then finally, in 6th grade, because our 6th grade teachers are doing departmentalization this school year, they needed time in their new content area teams to do some work. And so they came in this summer and they did work in their math teams. Science and social studies met and did some work. And then ELA came together and worked on their pilot units as well.
And then at the secondary level, there were a number of different focuses for their curricular work. As both the middle school and the high school were implementing new schedules this year, there was some intentional work done by the 7th through 12th grade ELA and math teams to align their curriculum with those new minutes that they had in those areas. They also did some work on spiraling the math curriculum so that they're revisiting skills and topics and providing additional opportunities throughout the school year for the students to continue to practice the skills that they had learned so that they can build that lasting proficiency. At the middle and the high school level, we have a new math intervention. So there was some work done around learning that resource and planning on how best to utilize it to meet the needs of the students. There was work done by different departments. They came together to continue to work on building common formative assessments so that we can continue to ensure that guaranteed and viable curriculum in every single course. There was also work done, as I mentioned before, on building units for those pilot resources in ELA and science. And then we had teams creating common rubrics and assessments, again, working on that guaranteed viable curriculum. And those teachers who are co-teaching classes did some intentional planning together. And then we also had learning and planning days for our administrators. So every summer, there's a week where the administration team in the district gets together to do some learning together and some planning work. So this year, there were a number of different things that we did. We participated in a training called Managing to Lead. This was provided by AWSA, which stands for the Association of Wisconsin School Administrators. And this training was attended by all of the administrators with their administrative assistants. And the focus was to improve our time management and our procedures so that we can make sure we're focusing on our main priorities. We also are moving to a new evaluation model this year. It's called the STRONG model, created by Dr. James Strong and supported by CISA 6. So Rachel led us in some learning around that new evaluation model. And then we had 2 days where we brought in teacher leaders. We had all of the school leadership teams come together. They dug into their data, created school goals that are aligned to our district priorities. And then we had an additional day where we brought in the guiding coalitions from each school and continued to work on our professional learning community processes. So we had some learning together and then some planning, very intentional planning for them of how they can continue to lead this work in their buildings. So all of that curriculum work and these administrative learning days really has positioned us well for this school year and beyond.
So we did roll out a red carpet this year for our new teachers. It was great to have all of these new faces with us for 3 days at the start of the school year. We did a couple of, I'll just give you some highlights. We spent some time on day one just getting to know the district, understanding policies and priorities, and then talking a little bit about our PLC journey that we've been involved in as a district. And then we ended day one with a bus tour. And our bus tour included not only a look at our district, but also common speed traps, the best place to buy sweet corn, and where you can get really good mums or flowers for fall. So it was, and actually those speed traps have come in handy. I just want you to know. People have reached out. So we use that as a retention strategy also so that people don't get ticketed on the way to work. We feel that's a good savings. Day two, we spent some time looking at our district data, instructional practices, and then time with their mentors. So also a great opportunity. And in general, our survey data from the new staff, all of the responses were incredibly positive. They really enjoyed meeting the district employees and other new teachers also. And then also just getting the information about the district and understanding like the culture and climate. Like they really liked, you can get the things that you have to get, but you also want to know what that soft feel is around like, what am I coming into? And so the feedback was really positive and we had a great couple of days together. And then when we did come back in August, we had a blend of 4 days that was building and district professional development, along with some time for teachers to be in their classrooms. So during that time, we spent time looking at our goals and our district goals. Tom did an outstanding job of talking about safety. He was so excited. No, he really did do a great job. And then we did do some learning around our professional learning communities and our building. Brook Life always comes in and does an outstanding lunch for all staff during that time. And this year they also got us a shirt, which is this supposed to be like ACDC? What is the rock band?
Yep.
Yes.
It is.
That wasn't my jam. So anyway, we're all getting shirts courtesy of Brook Life also. And then we had Luis Cruz come as a guest speaker, and Luis is from the Solution Tree organization and spoke with our staff about professional learning communities and the power in that. When we looked at our data from our speaker that day, from Luis, we had a rating of 1 through 5, 5 being the best and 4 being like satisfied and extremely satisfied. 91.1% of our staff rated him as a 5, and 8.9% rated him a 4, and no one was any lower than that. So that's just really outstanding results. Some valuable aspects came up as relating the work that he brought to us to our district mission, and then breaking down the work needed to achieve our mission as a district. Staff felt it was motivating, engaging, and relevant. It helps people gain a better understanding of the PLC process and how it can be used to improve our schools. And multiple people commented on the quality of the presentation and that it was one of the best August professional development sessions they had attended. So we were really glad to see such positive feedback and to kick off the school on such a positive note for this school year. So that wraps up. We just have just an opportunity for questions, but again, just another opportunity when staff are watching today that our administrators and our staff and teachers know that we're so grateful for all of the work they do. We know that this presentation that we just put on is just a glimpse of all the work that went into it, but we are really grateful to have such a dedicated staff.
Bert?
Kind of relating to this topic, and I'm sure Dr. Cook will get his microphone ready. The DPI has made some changes to the state testing.
Yep, the school report card. Yep.
And my personal opinion that we have worked so hard as far as teachers, staff, everybody involved, and now the DPI has said, oh, we're not going to keep those high standards. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so
Not to be a buzzkill here, because it was a great presentation. We're doing great things, but I think people need to hear about this.
yes. So as we get further into the assessment, so two things. First, I do want to thank Christine and Angela and Rachel and Tom and Ben and Michelle and Jen and Jamie. They're the ones that, like, as you saw that professional learning and all of those opportunities, they're the ones that put the content together, provided the direction, provided the instruction to our staff. And that was a tremendous amount of work. There were a lot of people here for a lot of days, and they were being led by just some outstanding professionals. So I thank them for their work. Craig, to get to your comment about the DPI, yes, they changed how the individual test is scored, and they also changed what the benchmarks are for the school report card. I have been in education now. This is my 23rd year. I have seen the DPI first administer the WKC as the standard, implement No Child Left Behind, make a change after the Common Core and the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium came through. I saw them implement the Badger test, change that then to the forward exam, set the benchmarks, for us, and now those benchmarks have changed. It doesn't surprise me that they did that. Based off of everything that we have going on in our system, it does not necessarily matter what the DPI is going to do. Our teachers are going to teach at a high level. Our students are going to learn at a high level. And our schools will achieve overall at a high level. So I'm not too, it does water down those results. I mean, it was interesting to see the disagreement between Tony Evers and Jill Underley on this topic. I think that, Evers, his administration at the DPI did set a high bar for us to achieve. A lot of educators, we groaned about that when that test first came in because it was such a substantial jump from what we had before. This does step that back a little bit, but it's not going to influence how we decide to operate as a school system. It does make it hard for us to compare one year's data to another. We will have been in November a presentation for the board after all those results are finally sorted out and public. And we'll talk through what those exact changes are, but I want to assure the board, I want to assure our community, that's not going to change the standard that we decide to work at. That's the standard that they decide to measure us at, but we're going to continue to exceed what those standards are. The one thing that we may have to do is take a look at some of our strategic performance objectives because, you know, based off of what those results are and those benchmarks that we set on that old standard, we may have to increase those for our system. That's not ideal because we set really good benchmarks to show how we were achieving, but if suddenly we jump up in every particular category, we do want to stretch ourselves. So that's how I see it impacting us, but again, we need to focus on the quality of instruction that we're providing here and the experience that our student have and try to get past what the DPI is going to do. Those agencies change by administration, and we have to stick the course with a good quality education for our kids.
Any other questions? Carolyn?
I just like to echo what Ben said about summer school with the teachers that we have involved, how phenomenal that is. I know my kids are always excited when they have their favorite teachers that are volunteering to teach different classes. That gets them jacked up. And my little one knowing that teachers don't just sleep at the elementary school, they now sleep at the high school over the summer. So that was wonderful to hear. And when when my family talks about my kids do the summer school program, other parents are like, oh, you're so mean, you put your kids in summer school. My kids jump in and defend it. Like, oh, it's the greatest thing ever. So that is, I think, and that 50% of our kids are involved in it just shows how awesome it is.
Thank you. I think, and a number of you know, I've been dealing and leading the summer school program for a number of years, and before we had electives for our 2nd through 8th graders, that number I gave you of whatever it was, 2,300 unique students. I looked back. Before we made those changes, we were at like 1,100 unique students. I mean, it's a substantial change. The other thing I want to say just to the teachers, one other thing, and Rachel had on the retention by brackets. You know, what's interesting, I think a lot of people think it's the younger teachers that always do summer school. Not the case here. We have a really wide variety. I mean, we have beginning teachers joining us. We have very veteran teachers as well. It is an amazing mix. And again, we can't say enough about the teachers that do this, and hopefully we can recruit more coming into next year too, because we need them.
Carolyn?
One more. I'm really glad that you guys had a good professional development presentation. Those can be kind of like a suck fest to start the year. So I'm so thrilled. I had teachers calling me and telling me how awesome it was, which that's been one of my gripes. Like, please make it meaningful. Whatever you do, make it meaningful for our staff because they're coming here. It's before school. It pumps everybody up. So we didn't nail it.
I just want to know what the tour's about. I heard like from several people that the Bowdoin tour is outstanding.
Yes, Christine is the bus tour extraordinaire, for sure.
There's really not much to it. I just ramble in between stops, but things that I find to be entertaining, like the gas station over by Eagleville, like best little deli in the back, people need to know that stuff. So if they go to Eagleville or Prairie View, you can stop there to get a coffee, or they have that good ice cream now, or you can like pick up dinner. So those are the other bits of information people pick up on the bus tour.
I just thought it was pretty cool. That's some of the feedback I got. The Bowdoin tours rock. So thank you. All right, move on to finance and facilities.
First thing that we have is we are looking to execute a new audit contract. So we typically have signed 3-year audit contracts with our auditors. They are wrapping up the 23-24 work and will deliver the final audit report sometime later in November or December. So looking ahead to 24-25 and the following years, we have a memorandum of understanding from Hawkins Ash to continue with them. I personally do enjoy working with them. I think they do a thorough job. They work with us. They work with Muskego locally, and I've enjoyed working with them. So they've given us a proposal. We could always go out and just solicit bids and see what else comes in. But I just want to bring this to your attention that it's time to adopt the new contracts. So, Greg.
So we don't really, I mean, it looks like a pretty good deal. What was it, a total, $26,000?
It's a 5% increase or.
And I know they're good because you're not in jail. That's a good thing. But do you want to, maybe we should look at some other bids just to keep them competitive? Or do we feel that they're the best and this is the gold standard?
I know that if we get out, some school districts had administrative change up with their superintendent, business manager, and then they cut ties with whoever. They said, let's just start new and get a new auditor. And they couldn't find an audit company that had the time and capacity to actually come in and do it. So they were left in some pretty serious limbo. So we could certainly do that. We can certainly do that.
Not trying to be Mr. Crazy Budget guy, but I'm just thinking out loud, that's all.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I actually agree with you, Craig. I do think that we need to look into other options just to do our due diligence.
Okay, we can do that. Is that the direction y'all would like to go at this time?
Yes.
Okay.
Does it mess anything up? Does it cause any problems?
I mean, they're working on our current audit report right now, so no. I think we can solicit like an RFP or request for quote and ask for these things and see where they come in at. We can choose one then, okay?
Timeline wise, how long does that normally take? And we have with this to sign this.
That I don't think that they have a deadline on this one here, so I will follow up and ask for that. But I think that we can do this between now and next meeting, school board meeting in October. Okay. All right, then the next thing we had then was a robotics lease. So we talked about this last month. I approached the owner of the building where our robotics team is working from, asked for a continuation of our current lease at the current rates for another 18 months. He wasn't a big fan of, he wanted to work in increments of 12. So he preferred to do 24 months at $200 more per month. But I said I don't have that authority to sign the offer he gave us. So he said, okay, we'll do 18 months, but for a $100 increase per month. So that's where the offer from the owner of the building stands, from $2,400 to $2,500 per month for the 18 months our robotics team was looking for. So no decisions needed right now, but that's where it's at.
How's the robotics team feel about it?
Good. They like it.
They cover a big portion, right?
At 50%, yes. So if that's something you guys are good with, then we can go ahead and proceed to do this on next week, Monday.
Everybody good with that?
Okay. All right, so then I'm going to quickly, I gave a longer version of this presentation here, but I'm going to go through an abbreviated version just as we wrap up the fiscal year here. Just to kind of remind the board where we stand, I gave this presentation in March. We're 6 months removed, so I just want to bring up a couple things as we wrap up the 23-24 school year. So just talk about fund balance, and let's define what that is. So fund balance is a snapshot as of June 30th. So as you close your fiscal year, last day of the year, you take a snapshot. And fund balance is the difference between our assets and our liabilities. So what we have on hand and if we have any outstanding bills that we owe. So assets do include money not yet received. So when the school year ends on June 30th, there are some grants where we make the expenses, we make the payments, and then we get reimbursed. And if we haven't received that money by June 30th, we can just chalk that up as a receivable. So when we talk about fund balance, it's not always just cash or money on hand. It also includes money that we haven't yet received, and therefore it's not always completely spendable. So cash makes up the majority of fund balance, but not all of it. All right, so what is a proper level of fund balance? And we'll get into what our level is, but fund balance should be an amount sufficient such that we don't have to short-term borrow. So in other words, some school districts reach a cash flow crunch, typically in November or December, where they are out of money, so they have to borrow for 30 or 60 days, pay their bills, and then when their tax revenues come in, in January, they can pay off that short-term debt. So we don't currently have to short-term borrow. So we should have enough fund balance so that we don't have to short-term borrow, and also that we have enough to realize our long-range goals. So for those reasons, a district should not continually apply fund balance, which we haven't done, to maintain programs, services, or technology without serious consequences to doing something like that. So we always should aim to create a balanced budget, and budget deficits should be only caused by one-time expenses. All right. Next slide then. Here we go. So in what circumstances might we use fund balance? If we find that there's a major one-time purchase or a construction project. And the appropriateness of that, what a board is willing to do, should depend on how much we have in fund balance in our general fund, or Fund 10. So again, when we build budgets, we're going to adopt a preliminary budget here next week, and then we'll adopt the final one in October. But generally, when we adopt those budgets, let's not use fund balance for ongoing expenses. Again, we haven't done that in a decade, if not a lot longer, but my time here, we've never done that. So here's where we stand here. You can kind of see over time, going back 20 years now, how our expenses have grown, right? Our payrolls get bigger, all of our expenses get higher, energy bills get bigger, textbooks cost more, bus companies cost more, auditors cost more, everything goes up. So with that, so does our fund balance. Okay, so as we take a look at our fund balance position on June 30th, we had 22.5, almost $22.6 million. But of that amount is what the cash is in the orange bar. So 17.9 million was our cash position as of June 30. And that sounds like a lot, but I'm going to show you our month-to-month progress here. So you can see that low water mark that occurs in each year is in the month of November for us. So going back to 2017, we had $1.2 million in the November 2017, and that's about, in today's terms, one payroll. All right, when we pay 700 people on a Friday, every other Friday, currently our payrolls are anywhere between 1.2 and 1.4 million. So there is that we don't have to short-term borrow. As you fast forward to the most recent November, we had 5.4 million. So we have basically enough on hand to cover 3 payrolls should anything real bad happen, right? So if the board wants to know, Tom, how much money do we have for one-time projects? I'd say you could probably spend about $5 million before you're really taking yourself into that range where you might have to short-term borrow. But if you want to know where that stands, that's where it is, okay? All right, so this is pretty much the same information, just you have 4 years worth. The yellow is 2021, the light blue is 21-22, the green is 22-23, and then the dark blue is 23-24. And this year represents the month of November. You can see January, February, we receive from our municipalities when we issue the tax levy, we start to receive those tax revenues, and that money kind of walks down through June, and then we start a new fiscal year in July, August, September, and it kind of goes down, down, down. So we really kind of bottom out in November, December. So when we talk about $22.6 million of fund balance, that's a lot misleading. That's not just money you can do whatever you like with. It really comes down to when you hit your low water mark, what do you really have at that point? All right. So just a couple more slides then. From a fund balance percentage, if you measure how much money you have or how much fund balance you have on June 30th and you divide it by that prior year's expenses, this past year we have, as of June 30th, we have enough fund balance to cover 36% of a school year's finances, or expenditures rather. So we could get through about 1/3 of a school year should all of our funding sources somehow dry up, go away, fall off, or lose a commitment at the state level or federal level, whatever it might be. All right, so comparatively speaking, when we take a look at that, this year, this is Waukesha County. So we have Muskego, Pewaukee, Elmbrook, Waukesha, Kettle Moraine, New Berlin, Hamilton, Oconomowoc, and Menominee Falls. We were at 32% at the end of 22-23. I don't have all these other school districts' numbers yet. So this is a 22-23, June 30th of 2023 snapshot. But I just put in our newest year here so you can kind of see where we are relatively with our most recent fiscal year and the one prior. So just from a a comparison purpose. You can kind of get a feel for where we are. So just in summary, as we close out that fiscal year, I'm proud to say that our fiscal position is still strong. 23-24 was an excellent fiscal year, and we have proper fund balance to handle unforeseen events. So as we talk about, we just did a huge section of roofing at Mukwonago High School. That's $1.8 million. Next summer, we will have the Clarendon roof completely done. That's going to be another $1.7 million. The Rolling Hills roof will likely take place sometime very shortly after this summer. So this past year, we ended with a $2.477 million addition of fund balance. That's going to get you a roof and a couple other things, right? So it certainly sounds like a big number, and it is. But given the needs of our buildings, we are in a spot where we can handle that 10-year capital plan. But we're in a good spot right now, so I'm happy to report back and just keep you afloat of where we are. You guys have any questions?
Yes. Would you mind addressing the high school roof? We hear from people asking why are we working on a roof when we just had a referendum for the high school.
Sure, I'll address that right now if that's all right. So I can't say we, I don't do it, but Andy Wagner and his team, they walk the roofs annually. We work hand in glove with Interstate Roofing Consultants. They do, the types of roofs that we have here, the commercial roofs. When we did the 2016 project, we said, hey, there's still 8 years of life left in this roof. Why would we rip this thing off now when we can still ride this thing out for almost a decade? So I understand where the question comes from, but if you have a car and it still runs well, are you just going to give up on it, or are you just going to get as much life out of it as you can? And that's what we did, and that's what we'll continue to do. So each year, we have our 10-year capital plan, and we talked about the Rolling Hills roof, for example. We'll go walk it next spring and see how's it doing. And we might say, hey, let's just patch these 3 spots and keep it going. We still got 2 more years out of this. We won't take it recklessly to the point where we push it up against its limit, but we're going to ride it out and get as much useful life out of that thing as possible. And that, I believe, is the right thing to do by the community. It's their taxpayers' money, so that's why we didn't do the roof in 2016. It still had life left, so try to squeeze water out of a rock sometimes and be efficient.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions?
What would we say is the target in terms of having our expenses covered?
So we have a minimum in our school district policy, which I had in the earlier March presentation here, but basically the school board policy says a minimum of 15%. I think where we are right now is it's solid, and I don't think that we need to increase our fund balance percent to say 50%. I don't think we need to go that high with it. It's not our job as a school district to collect tax dollars and then to sit on it like we're a bank. It's not that, but we also can't, spend down our reserves to nothing. That, I'd say, that's a reckless move there too. So as we pursue a referendum, one thing I see online, it's made known to me by others that, hey, how come the school district hasn't saved anything for this project? Well, I just demonstrated what that is. If people were interested in transparency, here's the presentation here tonight. I've done this before, so the information's out there. We could certainly dedicate a portion of our fund balance to a one-time building project. I said that earlier in the presentation. If you were to ask me, Tom, should we spend all, as we go back, let me just go back a couple slides here. When we look at our cash position in November of $5.47 million, you have about $5 million to work with, school board. That's what I'm telling you. Do I think you should drop all $5 million? I don't know, because now if something happens and a boiler blows or a chiller doesn't work or another roof has an unforeseen tornado that rips a hole in it, we might have to have enough money on hand. One thing I'm very proud of is in our school district, we have not had to go out for capital needs in terms of, hey, can you help us keep our buildings together? We're assuming the responsibility for Big Bend and Clarendon and Eagleville and Section, and those buildings, we take our operating budget and we address the building needs in addition to going after student learning needs. So it's, it's a balancing act there. But in terms of building a new building, it's much like buying a house. You know, you can certainly have a down payment, but how many of us really can just pay for the whole house in cash? So I understand when a community member says, why can't you save up and pay for this through your budget? I don't think we could ever put our fund balance up to $89.1 million. It's just not realistic. It's not the reality. I appreciate the thoughts, but the reality is if you want to pursue a new middle school or something similar, you're likely going to have to do a referendum. That's no different than taking out a 30-year mortgage when you are a private person buying a house. So, okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to action items, hires, retirements, and resignations.
All right, we have 4 hires. So these are all our title teachers. So Jackie, these are all limited term contracts as well, which means that they essentially expire at the end of the year. So Jackie Itzen is offered a 1-year limited term to be .3 at Clarendon. Becky Rail is being offered 1-year limited .62 at Prairie View. Aaron Smith is 1 year .33 at Clarendon as well as St. John's. And then Amanda Turcha is being offered a 1-year limited .57 at Clarendon. And then we had 1 resignation, Colleen Healy, who is a special education teacher at Clarendon Elementary School, and her resignation was effective this past Friday.
I'll make a motion. We accept.
Second it.
We have a motion and a second for hires, retirements, and resignations. Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Up next is executive session, according to Wisconsin Statute 19.85. We will be talking about wage increases for support staff and the performance evaluation of the superintendent. So looking for a motion to close the open session and go into closed.
I make a motion that we go into closed session.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second. Do roll call, please.
Mike,
Here.
Jake,
Yes.
Gail,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Vito,
Yep.
Carolyn,
Yes.
Craig,
Here.
Crosby, yes.
All right. Closes the open session, and we're going to take a